3 very creepy, scariest ghost caught on camera horror stories. The footage was supposed to be just another late night adventure, a stupid dare, a harmless exploration of an abandoned roadside motel, nothing more. But when 3 friends decided to check it out, they captured something they were never meant to see. And now, no matter how hard they try, they cannot forget it. Logan, Ethan, and Isabella had always been drawn to the eerie. Haunted houses, old tunnels, abandoned asylums. They had explored them all, cameras rolling, chasing the thrill, but nothing had ever happened. Not really. Just creaky floorboards and their own imaginations running wild. Until Logan suggested the Crimson Motel, a place no one talked about. No one dared to go near, because the stories, they were different. One night in 1989, everyone inside vanished. Not a single soul remained. No bodies, no signs of a struggle. Their cars were still in the parking lot, luggage untouched, but the people, gone. No answers, no explanations, just silence. The motel was shut down, left to rot, and over the years, the rumors began. Flickering lights, faint voices, shadows moving where there should be none. People who entered never came out. Ethan laughed it off. "It is just an old ghost story." Logan grinned. "So, let us prove it." Isabella hesitated. Something about it felt wrong, but in the end, she went. They always went. The moment they arrived, the air felt thick. The neon sign, long dead, still loomed over them, the letters barely visible under layers of rust and grime. The parking lot was cracked, weeds twisting through the pavement like grasping fingers. A single street lamp buzzed, flickered, for a split second. It almost looked like someone was standing beneath it. But when they blinked, gone. Logan exhaled sharply, turning on the camera. "All right, let us do this." As they approached, the motel doors let out a long, slow creak, as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, the air was stale. The front desk remained untouched, covered in thick dust. A guest book lay open, the last name written, dated October 17th, 1989. A coat still hung near the entrance, as if its owner would return at any moment. The floorboards groaned beneath their feet. Their breath felt loud, too loud. Logan swept his flashlight across the lobby. The faded wallpaper peeled in jagged strips. Old paintings, portraits, hung crookedly on the walls. But the worst part? The smell. Rot. Like something had been left here to decay. Then, a whisper. So soft, so faint, it could have been their imagination. But Isabella stiffened. "You heard that?" They froze. Silence. Then, again. Closer. Ethan swallowed. The wind? But there was no wind. Logan, camera steady, turned toward the hallway. "We should check it out." They stepped forward. A long, dark corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors, some slightly open, revealing nothing but blackness. The whisper came again. Their steps slowed. They reached room 206. The door was open. Inside, the room was empty, except a single wooden chair sat in the middle, facing the wall. The air was ice cold. Isabella grabbed Logan's arm. "I do not like this." Logan, gripping the camera, whispered, "We have to keep filming." He lifted the camera, and then they saw it. The mirror, dusty, cracked, and in its reflection, a woman. Standing behind them, she wore a black dress, her long hair hanging over her face. But her eyes, hollow, her mouth slightly open, as if whispering something they could not hear. And then, she moved, not like a person, not like anything human. 1 second, she was standing. The next, she was closer. The camera glitched, the flashlight flickered. The chair scraped across the floor, violently spinning before slamming into the wall. And then, she was gone. The silence was suffocating. Isabella's breath hitched. "We need to leave. Now." No one argued. They ran. Back in the car, hands shaking, Logan played the footage. The screen showed the hallway, the door to room 206, the moment they stepped inside. And then, the woman, clear as day. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light, a figure, standing behind them. But the worst part, as they turned to run, the camera caught something else. The moment they stepped out of the room, she followed, watching them leave. Isabella covered her mouth. No. Ethan locked the doors. Drive, now. Logan did not hesitate. The headlights cut through the darkness as they sped away, the motel shrinking behind them. But then, the camera, still rolling, caught something in the rearview mirror. A figure, standing in the middle of the road, watching them. The same woman. The last frame before the footage cut to black. She was smiling. They tried to explain it, tried to find records, a name, a history, but there was nothing. No trace of her, no reports, as if she had never existed. But the footage? It was real, and worse. They knew. She'd seen them, and some part of them feared she was not done watching. This is very disturbing. Scariest ghost caught on camera horror story number 2. The video should not have existed. That was the only thought racing through Daniel's mind as he sat frozen in front of his laptop screen. His hands trembled. His breathing was shallow, uneven. The small room around him felt colder. It was not just his imagination. Something was here, watching. The footage playing before him was from his own security camera, the one he had installed inside his apartment for safety. But what he was seeing on the screen should not be possible. Daniel had never believed in ghosts. To him, the supernatural was nothing more than exaggerated stories. People let their fears cloud their judgment, saw things that were not there. He had never experienced anything remotely paranormal, and frankly, he had no interest in it until last night, until he saw it with his own eyes. It had started with small things. His keys were never where he had left them. His bedroom door was slightly ajar each morning, even though he always closed it before bed. And sometimes, deep in the middle of the night, he would wake up to the faint sound of running water, the kitchen faucet on. Maybe it was stress. Maybe he was just distracted. That was what he told himself, until he checked the camera, until he watched the footage. That evening had been like any other. He worked late, had dinner in front of the television, then fell asleep on the couch. The soft glow of the screen flickered in the dark. But at 3:12 a.m., his security camera picked up movement. At first, nothing seemed out of place. The couch, the coffee table, the bookshelf, everything exactly where it should be. And then, the hallway light flickered. A shadow moved. It was not from outside. It was not a trick of the light. It had shape, a human shape. Daniel's breath hitched. His body tensed. The figure stood just beyond the hallway, motionless, watching. And then, it moved. It did not walk. It glided, slow, effortless, straight toward him. Daniel could see himself in the background, still asleep on the couch, completely unaware. The shadow stopped beside him. Then, it leaned down, closer, closer, but it had no face, only darkness. And then, the screen glitched. Static filled the video, a full second of distortion. When the image returned, the shadow was gone, but Daniel's sleeping body jerked violently, as if something had just touched him. The video ended. His hands hovered over the keyboard. His entire body felt wrong, like something inside him had shifted. His apartment was too quiet, too still. Daniel did not remember this happening. He didn't recall waking up, feeling strange, or hearing anything. But the camera had recorded it, which meant it was real. Morning came, but the unease did not fade. Daniel felt drained. His body ached, his head pounded, and his chest felt tight. He dragged himself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. And that was when he saw them. Scratches. 3 thin, red lines trailing down the side of his neck. Fresh. His stomach twisted. His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, his fingers traced the marks. The sting was sharp. Too real. He had not scratched himself in his sleep. His nails were too short. His reflection stared back at him, pale and shaken. And then, for the briefest moment, he saw something standing behind him. A dark figure, just beyond his shoulder. Daniel's breath stilled. His chest tightened. His hands clenched the sink. He spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. but his skin crawled. The mirror had not lied. It had been there, watching, waiting. Daniel sent the footage to his best friend Liam, who worked in tech. Liam called him back almost immediately. "What the hell is this?" His voice was unsteady. "I ran the footage through a few filters. Daniel, whatever that thing is, it does not have a solid form. It is like the shadows in the room are bending to create it." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat was dry. "So, it is not a glitch?" And that is not the worst part. Silence. Then Liam said, "There is audio." Daniel frowned. "My camera does not record sound." "I know," Liam said. "But when I enhanced the footage, I picked up whispering." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Liam sent him the file. With shaking hands, Daniel put on his headphones. At 3:12 a.m., just as the shadow appeared, a voice whispered. Not one voice, many voices. A chorus of whispers, low, layered, eerie, speaking in a language he did not understand. But then, one word became clear. His name. Daniel. Over and over again. Daniel. 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 That night, Daniel did not sleep. He sat in his living room, staring at his laptop, watching the security feed, waiting. 3 a.m. Nothing. 3:05 a.m. Still nothing. 3:10 a.m. A deep sense of dread settled in his chest. 3:12 a.m. The air changed. Heavy. Thick. The screen glitched. And then, it returned, standing in the hallway. But this time, it moved toward the camera. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The screen flickered. The temperature in the room plummeted. The lights flickered violently. And then, his bedroom door creaked open. Slowly, Daniel's chest tightened. His pulse pounded. He turned his head toward the doorway. Nothing, but he felt it. It was inside. The whispering started. Right behind him, Daniel's breath hitched. He turned. The screen went black. The next morning, Liam arrived at Daniel's apartment. The front door was unlocked. The living room, a mess. The laptop sat open, the security footage frozen at 3:12 a.m. But Daniel was gone. No sign of a break-in. No sign that he had left. Only 3 deep scratches carved into the wall near his bed. And the faint sound of whispering, still playing on the security camera. The footage remained. The shadow still appeared every night, watching, waiting, for someone else to see it, for someone else to disappear. You were not supposed to hear this story, but now that you have, it knows you have seen it, and tonight, it will be watching. This is very creepy. Scariest Ghost Caught on Camera Horror Story number 3. David Hayes never believed in ghosts. He had always been the type to roll his eyes at horror movies, scoff at ghost stories, and dismiss anything supernatural as pure nonsense. But that was before he saw what was on his security camera. Now he wished he had never looked. David lived alone in a quiet apartment just outside of town. It was not the kind of place anyone would call eerie. The building was modern, the walls were thin, the floors creaked now and then, but nothing about it had ever made him feel uneasy. At least, not until recently. It started with little things. At night, just as he was drifting off to sleep, he would hear it. Soft knocking at his front door. Always faint. Always just enough to pull him out of his half-asleep state. At first, he assumed it was a neighbor. Maybe someone coming home late. Maybe a drunk who had confused the apartments. But every time he got up, checked the peephole, no one. No footsteps. No voices. Nothing. Then came the door. David liked to sleep with his bedroom door slightly open. Just a habit. Something he had always done. But over the past few weeks, something strange had been happening. Every morning, without fail, he would wake up to find it completely closed. At first, he brushed it off. Maybe it was the air pressure shifting. Maybe his building had a draft. But the way it closed, so slowly, so silently, it made his skin crawl. And then, one night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, an idea formed in his mind. He would set up a motion-activated security camera in the hallway. Not because he believed in ghosts. Of course not. He just wanted to be sure. So, he did. That night, he left the door slightly ajar, just as always. His phone sat on the nightstand, the security app open. He watched the live feed for a few minutes before finally convincing himself to sleep. At 3:14 a.m., the camera detected movement. The next morning, David woke up groggy, his body heavy with exhaustion. His phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected. Frowning, he opened the security footage, and his heart stopped. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the door moved. Not a slow shift from the air, not a sudden slam. It closed on its own, deliberate, steady, and just before it shut completely, something appeared behind it. David's breath hitched. His fingers tightened around the phone. A shadow. Tall. Too tall. It had no features, no face, just darkness. And then, just as the door clicked shut, the shadow stepped back and vanished. David froze. His chest tightened. His pulse pounded in his ears. He replayed the video, again and again. Each time, the same thing. Each time, the same shadow. It was real. It was real. That night, David locked his bedroom door. And still, he didn't feel safe. He lay awake, staring at the security feed, waiting, watching. The hallway remained empty. 3:14 a.m. The screen glitched. David's stomach dropped. The static lasted only a second, but when it cleared, the shadow was back, standing in the same place. David's breath came in shallow gasps. His body refused to move. Seconds passed, and then the screen returned to normal. The shadow was gone. Morning came like a lifeline. As soon as the sun was up, David called his friend Eric, someone who had always been obsessed with paranormal investigations. At first, David hesitated to show him the footage. It sounded insane. But when Eric watched the video, his face turned pale. He swallowed hard, then said in a voice that barely masked his fear, "You need to leave." David's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Eric pointed at the shadow on the screen. This is not human." A chill crawled down David's spine. Eric exhaled shakily. "I have seen things like this before. They do not just disappear. They attach themselves to people." David shook his head. "But why now? I have lived here for 2 years." Eric's gaze darkened. "I do not know. But the fact that it appears at the same time every night means something. It is not random." David did not sleep that night. He stayed in his living room, all the lights on, watching the security feed. The apartment was silent. No knocking, no creaking. Then, at 3:14 a.m., the power flickered. His breath hitched. And then, from the hallway, a soft creak. David's eyes darted to his bedroom door. It was opening, but he had locked it. His pulse pounded in his ears. He gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles turning white. The door stopped halfway open. A heavy silence filled the air. And then, a whisper. Software unintelligible. David's blood ran cold. His instincts screamed at him to run. And he did. Grabbing his keys, his phone, he bolted out of the apartment, sprinting down the stairs without looking back. That night, he slept in his car, parked miles away. He never went back. Days later, he packed whatever he could and moved out. Far away, somewhere new, somewhere safe. But even now, in his new home, far from that apartment, he still wakes up at exactly 3:14 a.m. And his bedroom door, it is always open.